Hi everyone, my name is Chris. I'm a counselor here at Love Yourself, and today I want to share with you the basics of HIV. So we're going to call this HIV 101, and what we'll cover today are what is HIV, how is it transmitted from one person to another, and how can it be prevented. So here at Love Yourself, it's a safe space, which means it's a place of no judgment. We look at things at a medical perspective and not a moral perspective. So here, you are free to be honest and comfortable with your counselors. So let's begin. What is HIV? HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus. So let's break it down word for word. Human simply means it can only be transmitted from one person to another. You can't get it from a mosquito bite or from a dog bite. You can get other things from those, but not HIV. Immunodeficiency simply means it's the weakening of one's immune system. And lastly, virus just says that it's a microorganism that latches onto a host. In this case, it's the person's immune system, and that's the one that weakens it. And that is why we call it human immunodeficiency virus. So now you know. Now that we know what HIV is, let's talk about what happens when it actually enters the body. So from the point of risky behavior, the first 3 months are what we call the window period. So here, the virus is still undetectable. It is not going to show up in our tests. And then after the first 3 months, then it becomes detectable. It will show up in the tests, but it is going to be what we call asymptomatic, which means there are no signs or symptoms yet. And this can range from a period as short as 2 years to as wide as 10 years, which is why we recommend getting tested every 3 months rather than waiting for the symptoms or signs to show. If the HIV is left untreated or the client has not been tested, then the HIV can progress to the symptomatic stage. So here, the person can be open to opportunistic infections like pneumonia or tuberculosis, to name a few examples. And then here is where it can progress further into AIDS. Now, what is AIDS? AIDS stands for Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome. So acquired simply means it's something that you get from a source. And immune deficiency, similar to HIV, is the weakening of the immune system. And then syndrome is a combination of different infections and symptoms. If the person is in AIDS stage, can that person go back? The answer is yes. There is free and effective treatment, which we call ARV, or antiretroviral drugs. So the way this works is that ARV helps suppress the virus to an amount that is what we call undetectable. And when the person is undetectable, that virus is also untransmittable. It can no longer infect other people. With that being said, it's important to remember that HIV and AIDS are not the same. HIV is the virus, and AIDS is the late stage of HIV. If the virus is treated early on, it can reach undetectable status and the person can live a normal and healthy life. Now you might be wondering, how is HIV transmitted? So there are 4 body fluids that we focus on because these are the ones that are the most potent. So the first is blood. The second is semen. This also includes pre-seminal fluid or pre-cum. The third is vaginal fluid. And the fourth is breast milk. So now we know the 4 body fluids that can transmit HIV. Let's now talk about the 3 ways that HIV can be transmitted. There are 3 that we focus on. The first is infected blood and blood products. So this can be from a blood transfusion or from sharing of needles or from even getting a tattoo from an unlicensed professional. The second mode of transmission is mother-to-child transmission. So this involves all stages from the pregnancy to the childbirth all the way up to breastfeeding. Most expectant mothers nowadays are required to undergo an HIV test. This is so that if the mother tests positive for HIV, we can treat it right away and there's a great chance that we can prevent the HIV from being transmitted to the baby. The last mode of transmission, and the most common, is unprotected penetrative sex. So this involves all types of sex, from oral sex, anal sex, and vaginal sex. The important keyword here is unprotected. So as long as there is penetrative sex or penetration without any protection, we can automatically consider this as high risk. So how do we know if the activity that we did is high risk or low risk? So there are 4 conditions for transmission that we can ask ourselves. Think of it like a checklist. If all 4 of them are applicable or you answer yes to all 4 of them, then it is a high risk activity. But if you answer no to even just one of the 4 conditions, then the activity is low risk. So what are these 4 conditions for transmission? We call it ESSE or ESSE. So the first E stands for exit, which means the secretion of a body fluid from a person infected with HIV. S stands for sufficiency. So this talks about the 4 bodily fluids we talked about earlier: blood, semen, vaginal fluid, and breast milk. The second S stands for survival. So HIV is very sensitive. If it is exposed to a temperature change or other foreign substances like air, water, or acid, just to name a few, then the HIV will die. And the last E stands for entry. So the HIV has to enter the bloodstream of another person. So to recap, the 4 conditions for transmission or ESSE are exit, sufficiency, survival, and lastly, entry. The Department of Health recommends these 5 means to prevent HIV. It's called A, B, C, D, E. So A stands for abstinence, which means avoiding sex altogether. B stands for being mutually faithful or sticking to one partner. C is for correct and consistent use of condoms. And D is for do not use drugs and alcohol because this can impair our judgments. And lastly, E stands for education, like what we are doing right now. However, A and B, abstinence and being mutually faithful, might not work for all people. And that's why here at Love Yourself, we have come up with a more inclusive way of staying protected. So instead of A, B, C, D, E, we call this TSC or the Triangle of Self-Care. So what is the Triangle of Self-Care or TSC? So T stands for timely testing and treatment. It's advisable for those who are sexually active to get tested every 3 months. And for those who are not sexually active, every 6 months will do. For those who are living with the virus, we provide treatment in the form of ARV to suppress the virus. And with continuous treatment, the virus can become undetectable, and when the virus is undetectable, it becomes untransmittable. S stands for safe and satisfying sex. Safe meaning the person is aware of what's happening, the person is not under the influence of any drugs or alcohol, and satisfying meaning you have good communication with your sex partner. And C stands for correct and consistent use of condoms. Correct meaning the condom should not be expired, should be stored properly, and should be used with water-based lubricants. Consistent meaning the condom should be used all the time, from start to finish, and if the sexual intercourse lasts for more than 15 minutes, then the condom should be replaced with a new one. So that's the Triangle of Self-Care. TSC or timely testing and treatment, safe and satisfying sex, and correct and consistent use of condoms. So far, we've learned what is HIV, how is HIV different from AIDS, how is HIV transmitted, and how do we protect ourselves from HIV. So if you have any questions, you can ask any of our counselors or life coaches or visit any of our social media platforms flashed on the screen. Once again, my name is Chris, and I hope you have a great day.